Check it out.
Just them?
Sometimes it's nice to just get out of the big smoke and into the countryside, isn't it? Maybe visit a little seaside town and relax by the oceans. And that's kind of what Avalanche get to do in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And we got to go hands-on with this section of the game and another with a couple of demos that Square Enix has prepared for Tokyo Game Show 2023. Now, right out of the gate, this is obviously a direct sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake, and so that comes with all of the changes to the story, the navigation, exploration, and the combat. So whether you loved it or loathed it, or whether you were somewhat indifferent to it, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth continues with the same action-first combat style of Remake. You'll run around in battle arenas, you'll dole out light attacks in real time to build up the ATB meter, and then you'll be able to use that to let loose some skills and spells. And you'll also be swapping between characters as you go to make use of their respective ATB meters and abilities that the AI is diligently building up for you to use. Rebirth expands on this combat a little bit though with the new synergy attacks. These work in a similar fashion to limit breaks, now bringing together two characters for a powerful attack or ability that you'll want to unleash on an enemy, and that adds another layer of thought to the party composition that you want to take into a fight, figuring out the different synergy attacks that are available for the various duos, and also swapping between characters on the fly to get access to all three synergies that you'll have available to you. We used the first half of our demo with the fated Mount Nibel mission flashing back to a time where Sephiroth and Cloud were partners within Soldier, heading up to a Mako reactor at the top of the mountain, and it builds up to a battle with a Materia Guardian, with Sephiroth's raw abilities very much on show through this. You can switch to play as Sephiroth during this time, slashing with Masamune and with branching finishing moves available to cap off combo attacks with the triangle button. Not to mention his fun attacks available under the commands menu. With Cloud and Sephiroth combined though, they can perform the double helix, attacking in tandem and with a real cinematic flair. But really, this is a nice but relatively minor addition to the combat. The biggest changes with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will come with the structure of the world that you're exploring. Remake was a fairly linear game, something that was true to the opening act of the original that it's based upon, and Rebirth promises to be much broader and expansive thanks to new open world areas that you can explore as you see fit. We had an abbreviated, kind of hemmed in sample of one of these areas while heading to Under Junon, riding around in a fairly rocky and desolate area that surrounds the heavily guarded city, doing so on the back of a Chocobo. And this came with a few key examples of what to expect once the shackles are taken off in the full game. In particular, you're able to chase down fiend sightings and do battle with some monsters of the local wilderness, with some skill challenges to complete as you do so. They're a great way to keep your skills in check and try out different team compositions as you're given goals to pressure an enemy, stagger an enemy, defeat them within a time limit, prevent them from using a particular ability, and more. Also out in these areas are baby Chocobo, who you can follow as they lead you to secrets in the world. Things like Chocobo stops that you can restore by picking up the sign from the ground and then get a valuable feather in return. And there's also a Chocobo ranch where you can then spend those feathers to customize your Chocobo's looks with different hats, body armor, and legs. Some of these can also be customized further with color sliders, which is a pretty neat touch. Oh, and yes, of course, you can pet the baby Chocobo. Don't worry about that. After exploring the surrounding region, it was time to head to Under Junon itself, the fishing town that now exists directly underneath a huge city that doesn't just put it in the shade, but almost completely blocks out the sky. Pretty much as soon as you step inside the town's boundaries, you'll be drawn to the cries for help from a young girl who leads the gang down to the docks, where you'll see someone in a little boat being menaced by a giant sea creature. This leads into the Bottomswell boss battle, and again exemplifies the action-first direction that this game's combat takes, though dealing with enemies that can fly and having to do so at range is something I don't really get on too well with. Blame me for being a bit rusty or out of practice with Final Fantasy VII Remake if you wish. What I will say though is that it is a grand finale that is just about the most gloriously silly thing that will happen in a big budget game next year, and it does involve a dolphin. The middle chapter in a trilogy is always a difficult prospect, but from our hands-on time with it, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks like it is absolutely pulling it off. The more open world areas are certainly going to be enticing after the linearity of Remake, while the new synergy attacks add another avenue for over-the-top cinematic attacks to showcase the game's graphics and cinematic flair. And then there's also all of the new minigames, the story beats and locales that were teased within the release date trailer that came out last week. Needless to say, anyone that enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake needs to have Rebirth on their wishlist for February 2024. That's all that we've got for our preview of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We hope that you've enjoyed what you've seen. Before you go, make sure to do all of the usual YouTube things of liking, subscribing, clicking bell icons, you know the drill by now, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!